going to be working on hips today, and working a little bit with lotus flower symbolism. Lotus is a kind of a really significant symbol in the yoga tradition. We see it on t-shirts and coffee mugs and all kinds of places, but there's really a deep spiritual meaning to it. So I'll get a little bit into that. And it's really the traditional seated posture of meditation. We're not going to do the full lotus pose in this class because it's a general class, and the lotus pose is actually very demanding on the knees and on the hips. But we're going to do like kind of the preparation that we would do to sit in meditation posture, and then we'll sit in just our cross-leg position. But for a lot of us, the hips are really tight and it makes it hard for us to sit, and our back muscles, core muscles might be weak. So we'll address all of those things in practice today. We are going to do some somatic work on our back. So I have a blanket down, and you're going to need your blocks. Have at least one block within reach while you're on your back, and maybe a pillow for your head or a blanket, folded up blanket for your head. Okay, so I'm going to head back to the mat, put everybody on mute. Okay, so we're going to go into the bound angle shape on our backs. And you might want to use your blocks, you might not want to, depending on how it feels in your body, but soles of the feet together, knees apart, and then you can come down, maybe have something under your head. And we're going to stay in that position for a few minutes just to start to open up the hips, okay? Now, if it feels uncomfortable, please feel free to take your legs out straight, that's fine, early in the practice. And again, you could support with pillows, blankets, blocks, especially if those knees are a little bit higher up, okay? So when it comes to being in a seated posture, it's requiring that our hip joint, our leg bone in our hip socket externally rotates. So we turn the leg out to the side, which it is right now. So that's one major component of it. Also, it requires flexion, so the bending of the knee and the hip joints. And it also requires what's called abduction. This one, the leg moves slightly away from the midline, so it engages a little bit of the outer hip muscles. And then finally, a little bit of ankle flexibility to be able to sit. Sometimes our ankles bother us in a seated posture, and our back and core strength to hold our spine up tall in meditation. So notice here, excuse me, any particular sensations in your hips and in your legs. Sometimes we feel tightness on the inner thigh area, so the inseam of the leg. And if that's tight, sometimes our knees won't release down toward the ground. So you might notice that. You might notice stiffness in the outer hip glute area as well. And if we are kind of someone that's with a body type that's taller, thinner, so that we call the Vata body type, oftentimes the knees don't release down, because there's the taller and thinner we are, a lot of times there's more restriction in these areas of the body. So we're going to take about 1 more minute to continue to breathe here, continue to release. And I'm going to just share a quick little reading about the symbolism of lotus pose. Lotus in Sanskrit is called Padma, Padma. So lotus pose is Padmasana. So the lotus is said to represent the womb of all existence. Very much related to the symbol of Om, because that also is kind of has that womb of all existence kind of representation. It also represents our mind waiting to bloom through the practice of yoga. The realization of potential through the practice of yoga is symbolically visualized as a sequential blooming of lotus flowers along the spinal cord. Each flower, excuse me, having more petals than the one before, with the final lotus flower at the crown of the head having 1,000 petals. So a little bit of the symbolism there of the lotus flower. All right, so we're going to start to take a little movement. On your next inhale, let's take a full body stretch. And then we're going to bring our knees into the chest, give them a good squeeze, and then set your feet down flat onto the ground, knees bent. We're going to walk the feet apart as wide as the mat. And we're going to do a little hinge work with the legs. So you're going to take the right leg and drop it in toward the center. And notice here, any kind of stretch through inner thigh, outer hip, IT band. And then we're going to bring it back up. And we're going to do that a few times. Drop that knee in toward the center. And then bring it back up. Now, as you do that, I want you to add a little resistance. So imagine as you're trying to pick that knee back up, there's a heavy weight on it, and go a little slower so you feel those muscles engage a little bit more. And then as you're going down, imagine you're pressing something heavy into the ground, and there's that bit of resistance there. So in both directions, can you add a little bit of resistance to the movement? We're going to keep going on this right leg. Next time you start to bring it up, keep bringing it up and then press it slightly out to the side. And then you'll maybe notice the outer hip external rotator muscle turn on. So keep going, dropping that knee in with resistance, pressing the knee up with resistance, and then finally press it out. And we're going to do that just 2 more rounds on this side. So because we sit, I talk about this a lot, we sit a lot in chairs. So we're not sitting in cross-legged positions very often unless we do yoga, right? Or for maybe a teacher, we sit on the floor a lot, but most of us don't sit on the floor too often in our daily lives. So the hips don't get used to this external rotation. Okay, go ahead, switch over now to the other side. So first, just drop the knee open without any resistance. Just a couple rounds, getting the hip joint a little warmed up, a little lubricated. And then gradually adding in that resistance on the way up and the way down. So slowing it down a bit with that resistance. Keep going. And then you'll add that little bit of pressing out as you come up. So as you come up, and you're going to just press that knee out a little bit. So drop it in toward the center, internal rotation. And then open into external rotation and do a little press, a little squeeze. So IT band tightness can limit our ability to open those legs up into like that bound angle shape as well. So the inner and outer leg have a big role in our ability to sit. Okay, 2 more like this. I know some of you come to Sunday's class. When we do Sunday's class, we will progress to the lotus pose. And we're also going to do some myofascial release on these areas to help get us into that deeper version of the seated posture. Okay, walk the feet back in. They're hips distance apart now. And we're going to grab a block. So you might need to sit up, and we're going to put the block in between your feet. Okay? And then come back down so you're in your bound ankle with the block between your feet. And then we're gonna press the feet into the block. And as you press your feet into the block, notice again any muscles turning on. So I'm feeling it for me a little bit in my hamstrings and also those outer hip muscles. And then you're gonna just pulse that, relax, and then press. So a couple more rounds. Go ahead and do the press and release. So do that one more time. And pause. Okay, now we're gonna do the opposite. We're gonna try and drag our feet away from the block, but it's isometric. You're not gonna move your feet. Press the pinky sides down a little bit, and now try to pull the feet apart isometrically and feel how maybe those outer hip muscles turn on, and we're opening those inner thighs a little bit more. And then release. And try that a few more times. Drag apart, strengthening it, outer thigh, stretching inner thigh, and release. 2 more cycles. Then we're gonna alternate it. Okay. So now we're gonna press into the block and then drag it apart. And do that a few more times. Press into the block, drag it apart. Next time, press into the block and try to pick the block up off the ground, a little bit of core, let the block come down, try to drag the feet apart. Okay, press, try to lift it, release, try to drag apart. We're gonna add one more component here. Take the pillow out, place your hands behind the back of your head if you had a pillow. So now we're gonna press into the block, try to lift the block, and now lift your upper body, a little bit of core, like a crunch. Release down, try to drag your feet apart. Keep that going. Press into the block, little crunch. If you can't lift the block, just do the upper body. Release, try to drag the feet apart. Okay, do a few more cycles now on your own. As you come up, try to press your lower back into the ground. So we activate those lower abdominal core muscles. One more cycle through. And then go ahead, release, bring those knees back up and into the chest. You can rock a little, roll a little. Okay, and then we're gonna roll to our side and go ahead, come on up. And we're gonna come into a seated posture. So then you might want to grab your pillow, something to sit on. It does help with the knees and the hips if we elevate a little bit, okay? And then notice what it feels like to sit in a cross-legged position initially here. Anywhere that you feel any tension, restriction, pain, tenderness, just being aware. All right, so we're gonna sit up nice and tall, take an inhale. And as you exhale, start to hinge forward a little bit and bring your hands onto the floor in front of you. And then pause there and try to pull your legs apart from each other, almost like we did in that angle on our back. And notice those hip muscles engage. Good. And now coming back up, now we're going to put our hands on the outer legs as resistance, and you're going to press your hands and legs into each other as you fold forward. So press legs and hands and start to hinge forward any amount. You don't have to go far. Kind of scooting those sit bones back behind you and just feel those muscles working. Good. Slowly come up. Switch your legs. We'll do that again. Widen out your sit bones, a little bit behind you with your sit bones, and come forward. Try to pull those legs apart. Good. And then coming up, press your hands into the legs, legs into the hands, and try to fold forward again, any amount. Good, and then coming back up. And now we're going to pause. If you want, you can switch your legs back to the first side if it's more comfortable for you. Just sit up tall for a moment. And we're going to bring our hands in front of our heart. We're going to take the lotus mudra today. So hand position is a mudra. We're going to keep the pinky and the thumbs connected and open the middle fingers, 3 fingers up. So we're spreading those fingers into that lotus flower bloom. Okay, and then we'll use this as that symbolic representation of the lotus today, and lift it up and over your head. So the lotus flower also represents kind of rising out of adversity. Let your sit bones root down. Try to lengthen your spine. Reach that flower up as high as you can. So it blooms, grows in the mud, and as it comes up, it's pristine as it goes through that water. Symbolizing purity, rising above adversity, and then slowly lower back down to your heart center. Let's do that 2 more times. Inhale, reach it up, open the flower. Lengthen up as your sit bones drop down. Try to reach it up as high as you can. And then release back to your heart space. And we'll do that 1 more time. So nice and meditative. Inhale, reach it up, open the bloom. And release, bring it back to the heart. Okay, let's go ahead, come into our tabletop position from here. You can keep your blocks toward the top of your mat. And then we'll come into all fours. All right. So we'll go through our cat-cows. Today's focus of the cat-cow is going to be the rotation of the pelvis. So we'll inhale and lift those sit bones up. Exhale, curl the tailbone, the sit bones down. And then keep that going, feeling that rotation of the pelvis as you do your cat-cows. So the more sedentary we are, the less lubrication we have in those joints, and the more the fascia builds up around the joints, and it gets stiffer and tighter. So we want, we want that fascia built up to protect the joint, but we don't want it to be kind of stiff and tight. So the more we move our bodies in these different ways, good movement diet helps our fascia feel more pliable, more lubricated, and more healthy, less inflammation. Okay, go ahead, take a quick child's pose. Rest your arms. We're going to do just a couple more things here in our tabletop position. All right, let's go ahead, come back up. And now we're going to let our hips rock from right to left. So before it was more of a forward and back motion, now right to left. And just see if you can be aware of how your leg bones kind of glide in your hip sockets. Sometimes there's some little creaks and cracks. And then we're going to make this into a circle. So we'll circle it around. And then we're going to reverse, so the other direction. Okay, one more time back to your child's pose. And then we're going to come up into our downward facing dog to come to stand. So if you have your blanket down, you could take that off. Set your blanket off to the side. And then you could come back to your tabletop and lift up your legs, or sorry, lift up your knees and pedal it out a bit in your dog. And then we're going to walk hands back to the feet. Keep a nice bend in your knees, fold forward. And then let's inhale, press into those feet, rise all the way up to stand. And bring your hands to your heart. Good. Okay, couple half sun salves, a little warming up here. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, fold forward, bringing that little bend in your knees. Inhale, halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach up. Exhale to the heart. Good. And let's do 2 more rounds. Inhale, reach it up. Exhale, fold. Lengthen halfway on your inhale. Exhale. Inhale, reach up. And to your heart. Let's do 1 more round on your own. All right, so I'm going to face over this direction. Have your blocks at the top of the mat. Okay, we'll come back to mountain pose. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, fold, hands to blocks. We're going to step the right foot back, coming into a lunge. Move your blocks back knee down. And then we're going to keep the back toes untucked if it's comfortable for you. So we're working a little bit on the ankle flexibility as well today. And we're going to try and come up to our vertical position. Pad that back knee if it's sensitive. And try to press the top of your foot and your toenails down into the ground. Hook your tailbone forward. You'll feel that outer hip muscle engage. And then hands to heart. Good. From here, take your lotus flower up and overhead. And as you take it up and overhead, feel like you could lift your rib cage right off your pelvis. Get nice and tall. Keep pressing those toenails down. If you want to go a little deeper, you can bend a little bit more into your front knee and lift up maybe a little back bend. Maybe you could gaze up if you feel steady. Keep pressing the toenails down. That'll help activate and open up the hip in the front. And then we're going to release our hands down. Take your blocks and bring them inside your left foot. Walk your left foot to the left and bring your right knee a little bit more to the right. So we're coming more into what we call the lizard pose. Some of you might be able to take your blocks down toward the ground. You might even be able to bring your hands all the way to the floor. Sometimes if we want to go deeper, we could come down onto our forearms, but don't push yourself. And we start to open up those inner thighs. Reach the left knee away from the right knee. So we lengthen the inseams of the legs. Hold here. Let's do another breath. And then slowly coming back up onto your blocks, walk the front foot in, frame your foot with your blocks. Bring those blocks up again to the highest setting. We're gonna lift that back knee, blocks forward, step forward, and fold over your legs. Inhale, reach all the way up. Exhale to your heart. Okay, we'll do that on the other side. Inhale, arms reach. Exhale, fold, hands to blocks. This time, left foot steps back, move your blocks back, and drop down onto that back knee. And if it's comfortable for you, we're gonna put the toes flat, so top of the foot flat, and then come up to the vertical, find your balance. If it bothers you, of course, then you can always tuck your toes, but let's see if we can try and press down into the top of your foot and into your toenails. Keep your chest lifted, and then hands to heart. Go ahead, take your lotus flower, reach it up and overhead as you continue to press down into the top of your foot and hook your tailbone forward. Again, if you want to deepen, you can bend into that front knee and reach up, up, up. So we're lifting the rib cage off the pelvis. Good, release, hands down. Walk your right foot to the right, bring your blocks on the inside. Left knee a little bit to the left. So we make more space in the inner leg. And then you can decide, do you want to come lower, lowering your blocks, coming onto your forearms, whatever feels right for you. And then we stretch the right knee away from the left knee to open up that inseam of the leg. Holding it here, let's do one more breath. Good, and then we're gonna walk it back to the center, frame your foot, lift your back knee, and turn your blocks up higher, step it forward, and fold over your legs. Inhale, we're gonna reach all the way up. Exhale, hands to your heart. Okay, let's inhale, reach up. Exhale, fold. And this time, as we inhale halfway, we're gonna step back to plank pose, top of a push-up, and then drop your knees, lower all the way down to your belly. I'm just gonna fix my mat here a second. Come all the way down, and we're gonna come into Sphinx posture. So prop up on your forearms. And then we're gonna press those toenails into the ground, tops of the feet into the ground. Press your arm bones down, lift your chest. So your kneecaps are actively lifting off the ground, and we're strengthening the ankle joint here. Okay, now we're gonna alternate, tuck your toes under, lift your heels, and again, the legs are active. Now we're gonna alternate, tops of the feet flat, press into the top of the foot. Tuck the toes, lift the kneecaps. Good, 2 more like this. Tops of the feet press. Tuck the toes, lift the knees. 1 more time. Good. And then release, take a little break, give your hips a little shimmy side to side. And now let's slide our hands back by the lower chest for cobra pose. We're going to continue now to press the toenails into the ground. Kneecaps are lifting. Roll your shoulder heads back and lift up into cobra. So we get that upper back strengthening that we need to be able to sit up tall in our meditation. Lower down. Keep pressing those toenails down. 2 more cycles. Good. One more time. And then this time we're going to press to all fours. Back to our downward facing dog. And back to standing. Walk your hands back towards your feet. Bend those knees a lot. Bring hands to hips. Push the feet down and we'll come all the way up to stand again. Okay. We're going to stand in the middle of your mat. We're going to do some side to side stuff here. And we'll step the feet apart wide. Okay, hands on hips. Neutralize your pelvis by lifting the front of the abdomen, lengthening your tailbone. And then warrior 2, turn your right foot out. Turn your left heel out a little bit, widen that heel, and then we'll bend the knee coming into warrior 2. Turn your ribs and your torso to face the long side of your mat. And then press down in your feet into your heels. So you start to feel those outer hip muscles engage. Now from here, see if you can lift your front heel off the ground. So we're working a little bit again on that ankle flexibility. Keep pulling your tailbone down and then lower that heel again. Good. If it's too much, don't lift the heel. You can stay working on your warrior 2. Try it again. Lift the heel. Try to keep that. Left hand comes down, right palm up. Reverse warrior with that heel lifted. If it's too much, just put the heel down. And then back to warrior 2, arms out to the side. Release your heel, straighten your leg, parallel your feet, hands to hips. Good, pause there. Find that neutral pelvis again, tailbone draws down. And now let's turn the left leg out, widen the right heel, and then bend into the left knee. Square your torso toward the long side of your mat. Hold it there and press down into your feet and your heels especially. And then see if you can come up onto the ball of the front foot, lifting that heel. And press the knee a little bit more toward the pinky edge of your foot. Release the heel down. And again, lift the heel up. This time, try reverse warrior. With your heel up if you can. Good, back to a warrior 2 position, arms out. And then heel down, straighten that leg, parallel your feet. And let's step back in for a moment and shake it out. Nice work. Okay, we're gonna step those feet apart wide again. Turn the toes out this time. And we're going to make sure that we're turning from the whole leg. So leg bone, kneecaps, toes kind of all turn out. And then we're going to bend those knees. Moving into the goddess squat. Press down into your heels and try to press your knees a little bit more towards your pinky toes. And then standing up. So we'll do that a few times. If you can, let's put hands at the heart. Press your palms together. We'll lower and lift. Kind of pushing into your heels the whole time. As you're coming down, press down. And then press into the floor to try to straighten yourself out. Okay, let's hold it this time if you can. Press into your heels, pull your tailbone down, lift your chest. And now let's see if we can take our lotus flower up and overhead. And press those knees toward the pinky toes. Good, rising up. And parallel your feet. So now the toes point straight ahead. Hands on your hips. If you know it's hard to reach the floor, you could grab some blocks here in front of your hands. If you can easily reach the floor, you don't need them. We're gonna bend the knees a lot, hinge from your hips, and fold forward. Bring your hands down to the floor in front of you. And now let's turn the toes in just a little bit, widen your heels, so a tiny bit pigeon-toed, not a whole lot. And walk your hands forward like down dog. Now we're gonna bend those knees a little deeper and lift your sit bones up. So we're straightening and bending the legs, but not from the knee joint. We're working from the sit bones. Sit bones lift, sit bones drop. Keep your hip creases pulling back. Go slowly as if you're moving through some resistance. And then we're gonna pause. Those legs could be slightly bent, or you can have them more bent, it's up to you, but lift those sit bones up. Feel like you're lengthening the inner leg, and maybe walk your hands back under your shoulders. Some of you might be able to hold your toes or your feet, arms out to the side. And try to lift the inner arches of your feet, big toe aside. Lift those arches, don't collapse. Good, walk hands out under the shoulders again. Heel toe your feet in. And then when you're ready to bring hands to hips, push down, rise up. And then step it all back in. Come into your mountain pose. Inhale, reach your arms up. Exhale, fold forward. So from here, we're just gonna bend those knees and we're gonna come down into a seated posture. So bring those feet in front of you, hands are gonna come behind you, and we're just gonna do a couple windshield wipers. And we're gonna do some more seated hip opening work here. So you might wanna grab your pillow or blanket to sit on again. And first we're gonna come into like a bound angle shape. All right. So if you want, you can put your hands behind you for support, or you can hold on to your ankles or your shins. We're gonna try and pull those feet apart like we did on our back. Pull apart, lengthening those inner legs, strengthening the outer legs. Keep your posture nice and tall. And then release and press your feet together. When you press together, it almost lifts the legs a little bit for me. And then drag apart, and it kind of releases the knees a bit when you drag apart. And then two more like that. Press in and pull apart. Last one. Okay, go ahead and bring those knees up, straighten the legs out, bring your hands behind you, push down, find a little back bend, lift your chest up, pull your collarbones apart, and get that upper spine to draw in, contract your upper back. Good, release, draw those legs back into our bound angle. Okay, from here, take your right foot forward in front of your left foot so that your feet line up with your pelvic floor, okay? So it's like an asymmetrical bound angle. Right foot maybe about a hand print in front of your left foot and hold there, okay? Try to drag those feet apart and release. All right, now inhale, lift up tall. Exhale, see if you can hinge forward a little bit. Bring your hands down in front of you. And then the sit bones kind of scoot back behind you. Some of you might be able to walk it out a little farther. If you already feel really congested, don't go too far. Stay up taller. And we get a big stretch here in those hips. One more breath. Good, and slowly, slowly bringing it up. Switch out. Bring the left foot in front of the right foot, about a hand print. The feet are flexed. You're kind of pressing down a little bit into that pinky edge. And then we're going to draw those legs apart isometrically. And then we're going to come into the forward fold. So bring the hands down any amount. Scoot your sit bones back. And walk it out to your capacity. So just be really careful of your knee. We don't want to force ourselves into any of these postures. So listen to your body. Go where you just first start to feel that little bit of a stretch. And don't feel like you need to push yourself farther. All right, slowly bringing it back up. Excuse me, legs out front, flex your feet, point your toes. Flex your feet, point your toes. Do that 2 more rounds. Okay, and now we're back to the bound angle shape. We're going to grab one of our blocks and put your block in front of you, about a hand print in front of your feet. And now we're going to take the right foot on top of the block. If it's too far away, bring it in a little bit closer. So now that leg is lifting up. So in order to get into a cross-leg position or a lotus pose, we need to be able to have that one leg a little higher than the other. So we're going to flex the foot and press it gently into the block. If it bothers you, you can also put a blanket on top of your block for softness. And then take an inhale, and as you exhale, hinge forward any amount. Bring your hands down if you can. And we're going to keep a little bit of pressing the pinky edge into the block. All right, slowly come back up. Now this time, pick your foot up and see if you can hold your foot in your hands. And then if you had to round your back to get it, can you lift your spine up again and lift your foot up a little higher? Maybe lift that foot even higher. And now push the foot and hand into each other as you lift your chest. So we create that resistance again. Good, release, back to down angle. And then we're going to put the left foot on top of the block. Flex the foot, root down into the pinky edge. Take an inhale and then exhale, hinge forward. If any of this is too much, do it without the block like we did the first round. Forgot to mention that. Again, don't force it. Take a couple of breaths. Good, and then slowly coming up. And we're going to pick that foot up, see if we can hold it in our hands, and then lengthen your spine again and lift that foot up nice and high. Okay, if you can't hold your foot, hold your ankle. You can even use a strap here if you wanted to. Push your foot and hands into each other. It's like you want to pull that leg back like a bow and arrow. Push it in, lift your chest. And release. Okay, back to the down angle. We're going to put the block between our feet And put the block on the flat setting, not the widest, but the kind of that middle setting. And see if you can press your feet into the block as you lift up and be on the tops of your sit bones. Extend through your inner knees, almost like you're going to drag your feet toward your pelvic floor isometrically. One more breath. Good, and release. All right, take the block out of the way. Stretch those legs out again. And this time circle the feet around. And go the other way. Okay, let's just take a cross-leg position again. So notice what shins in front. We're going to do both. I want you to cross your shins right in line with your pelvic floor. Flex your feet. Press the pinky edge of the feet down a bit. Press your sit bones down a bit. And now lift up through your chest and take your shoulders back. So we're going to revisit right after Shavasana for a brief seated meditation. But now let's go ahead and switch those legs. Do it one more time. Shins are crossed right in line with pelvic floor. Flex your feet. Press the pinky edges down. Sit bones press down, lift up tall, and then open your collarbones. So the more those shoulders are forward, they're going to tend to pull us into gravity. So if we keep those shoulders open, that's less likely to happen, and we can strengthen our backs. Hold that one more breath. All right. Let's go ahead and release. We're going to come onto our backs, and you're going to need one block. We're going to come into supported bridge. So after all that asymmetrical hip work, it's sometimes nice to do something very symmetrical, and supported bridge is a nice stabilizer for our lower back and our SI joints. So when you come down on your back, lift your hips and slide your block in right under the sacrum. And let's pause there. You might need to kind of scoot your tailbone a little forward, if that'll help your comfort of your lower back. Let your feet be planted. Let this tailbone tip up a little bit. Let your rib cage get heavier. And then relax your arms. Let's take a couple breaths here. Now you can either stay here or come into the inversion. You can bring your knees in, take your legs up. And then if you have your legs up, you might want to do some more ankle rotations. That seated posture can be tough on the ankle joints. Go the other direction if you're circling. Nice and slow. And then let's bring legs together, flex the feet if your legs are up. You can still relax in your supported bridge if you prefer. Firm up your quads, flex your feet, so a little more active. And then we're gonna pull the feet together, knees down, drop into a bound angle on the block. And then press your hands into your thighs, thighs into your hands, feet press a little bit together. And then bring those knees back in, pull them towards your chest, a little lower back traction like we did the other week. And then we're gonna bring those feet back down to the ground, back to supported bridge. All right, we're gonna lift the hips, slide that block out. And bring your feet apart as wide as your mat. Do a couple more windshield wipers side to side. And then we're going to bring those knees into the chest and make some nice circles on the lower back. And we'll reverse, go the other direction. And pull the knees back into the chest, give them one more good squeeze. And then we're gonna find Shavasana. So I'm gonna come on up and you guys go ahead and make yourself comfortable. So grabbing any props that you need. We're going to take about 5 minutes for your Shavasana, then we're going to come up for our seated meditation. So I'm going to give you guys a moment or two to get settled. And I'm going to get our reading ready for today. All right. So feeling this settling quality now at the end of your practice. Just letting your body kind of drift toward the ground, letting the mind quiet. And just share a little reading. This is kind of this continuing this idea of settling into stillness. One of my teachers used to talk about the mind as being a muddy river. It is moving, sometimes slowly, sometimes rapidly, and it is not very clear. When we meditate, it is as if we plunged a clear vase into the river to draw up water and then placed it on the shore. The vase is our practice of meditation, a clear and stable container. Eventually, because the vase is unmoving, the sediment in the water begins to settle. At first, it becomes semi-transparent. And by the next day, the water is crystal clear, with the sediment having settled to the bottom. When I first heard this teaching from Kalu Rinpoche, I thought of this verse by Taoist poet Lao Tzu. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? In some ways, meditation is a waiting game. The container of meditation keeps the mind and body still. And when we tether the mind to a non-conceptual anchor, the energy of agitation and restlessness begins to gradually settle. And eventually the mind becomes clear and calm like the water left in the pitcher. So allow yourself a few more moments here of this settling, just feeling those contents of your body settling into the ground, contents of the mind releasing into the ground. And when we look at the chakra system in yoga, the hips and the root chakra, the pelvic floor, are associated with the elements of earth and water. So that makes mud. And we can get really sticky and stuck in this area of the body. So the more we move in our hips through practices of yoga and walking and, you know, any kind of other movement that we do, dancing, moving our hips, we can create more fluidity in this area so we don't feel so stuck. I'll give you guys another minute just for quiet and rest. Okay, so we're going to take our time now to start to return. Moving very slow motion, deepening your breath. Smaller movements at first. Taking your time, eventually coming over onto your side. So make any movements that feels right for you. And have that brief pause before coming up to your seated posture. And then go ahead and find that wide base by widening your sit bones. And we're going to cross the shins in line with the pelvic floor, flex the feet. You can pick your favorite side. And then let the spine rise up out of the pelvic floor. Either close your eyes or find a soft focal point. And we're going to go through this visualization of these lotus flowers along the spine through the chakra system. So we start by visualizing the base, the ground. It's like the mud under the water, which is more representative of the roots or the seed of the lotus. We can allow that energy to start to float upward toward the area below your navel center. So that's more the water element, second chakra. So you can start to visualize that flower starting to come out of the mud through the water. And then it rises up to the solar plexus. And that's kind of right below your chest, representing the sun, the fire element. So that flower reaching toward the sun. And as it rises up, it's gaining more and more petals. It starts to rise up to the lotus of the heart, flowering open at the lotus of the heart, representing the air element of the lungs, the breath. And then continuing to rise to its full expression through the through the throat chakra, through the brow center, and finally the crown of the head, represented by 1,000-petaled lotus, sometimes depicted as a golden 1,000-petaled lotus, representing the blooming of our consciousness, the opening of our mind, our connection to something beyond ourselves. So imagine this openness at the crown of the head and really float that lotus flower up, up, up toward the sky. And then let's add our mudra, bring the palms together. Open the lotus flower up and rise all the way up toward the sky. So let your roots be strong. The spine lengthens up from there. Reach that flower up as high as you can, strengthening your spine. Maybe you could tip your head up, look up. What is it that you connect to beyond yourself? And then we'll start to lower those palms back to the heart center, closing the lotus bloom. And then we'll bow our heads to the heart. Thank you so much, everyone. Namaste. All right. Hope your hips feel good. Thank you for joining me today.